Welcome to the Transform My Dance Studio podcast, the only podcast for dance studio owners, where each week we bring you business growth strategies to help you increase your profits, impact the lives of more students, while ensuring you get back some time to have a little life outside of the studio. It's time for you to become the go-to studio in your area. Now, here's your host, founder of the Dance Studio Owners Association, Clint Salter.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Transform My Dance Studio podcast. It's Clint Salter here, and thank you so much for joining us for a very special episode, because today we have Josh Ellidge, who is a US Navy veteran turned PR expert. Josh launched upmyinfluence.com to help turn entrepreneurs into media celebrities, increasing their authority, influence, and revenue. Josh writes a syndicated newspaper column to over 1.1 million readers and regularly appears on more than 75 TV stations across the country. He is here to share his PR secrets with us today. Josh, thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Clint, I'm so excited. We're going to help a lot of people on this conversation here.
Awesome. Can't wait. So I guess the first question I've got for you, Josh, is why should our dance studio owners be interested in PR? Because there's a lot of talk about Facebook ads and buying online media to attract new students and families. What does PR do?
Yeah, so PR, or being seen on other people's stages, gives you authority. You can't really buy authority so well. And in fact, kind of the common difference that a lot of PR and marketing people will, the kind of how they'll define it is that marketing, or I should say advertising specifically, advertising, you have very high control over the message, but you have very low trust with the audience, because obviously what you're doing, pretty much anybody can buy an ad. All they need is money, and that doesn't really mean a whole lot in terms of whether or not they should trust you. However, when you are doing maybe you're doing a collaboration with a YouTuber, maybe you're seen on local TV, maybe you're being written about in Forbes.com. All of these things, you have very low control over exactly what you can say and do, and quite frankly, that's appropriate. But you get super high trust, and the other kind of advantage is there's a limited number of spots. I mean, Ellen only has so many people on the show. If you want to be on the Ellen show, the Washington Post is only going to feature so many businesses in a certain day. On any given day, anybody with $5 can advertise on Facebook. So it's just not that special. You wouldn't put a logo on the front of your webpage that said, as seen on Facebook. Like, you wouldn't do that, but you would do that if you were, as seen on Oprah's couch. You would definitely advertise that. So it's a big difference. Now, in terms of eyeballs, yeah, you can get in front of eyeballs. It's just, are those people going to do anything with you? And, I would argue if you are an advertiser, and I think everybody should be advertising, because it's a little bit different than just getting recognition, but your PR that you do, and again, when I say PR, I don't want you to get whatever definition you have in your head for PR, and I'm not speaking about you, Clint, but to the person listening to us, I want you to think a little bit more broadly about what that means. That could mean public speaking. It could mean a lot of things, and we'll talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, awesome. I love it. Look, it's so important, and I love what you said about, with the Facebook ad, anyone can do it, and there's low trust there, but we really want to build that trust, because that's what our parents, our potential students are going to be connecting with. It's also the reason why they select to come to, our dance studio versus the dance studio up or down the road. So how can, if our studio owners are listening and say, okay, I'm listening, Josh, this sounds good. How do they get started? Like, if they've had no PR coverage before, if they haven't looked at this as a vehicle to getting themselves and their business out there and standing out, how do you start?
Right. So our first inclination is we think, well, if I'm going to do PR, if I'm going to expand my visibility, well, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to just rush out and start talking to journalists and influencers, and hopefully they will say something nice about me. They'll wave their magic wand, and I'll be successful and I'll get lots of business. And I would argue that that's probably one of the worst things that you could do, especially if your plan is just to spam journalists. And also another thing that would be very bad to do would just be to send a single email to a journalist, and then when they don't respond, you take it personally like they don't like you. Which is, and by the way, I have to tell you, Clint, the two things I just shared right there, if I were to do an assignment right now and I'd say, okay, the person listening to us right now, I want you to spend the next 5 minutes doing PR stuff, that's probably what they would do. One of those two things. Mm-hmm. And so don't do those two things. That's why people get a little frustrated with PR and they end up hiring a PR agency that's going to typically way overcharge them and charge them for stuff that they just don't need. Here's the most important work that you need to do. You need to focus on your own indicators of authority first. If you want to be taken seriously, you need to represent yourself in a way that is going to garner their respect. Now, again, you don't have to be perfect, but at least fix some of the easy stuff, like, get a nice headshot. I mean, that if you don't have one already, that should be a given. Mm-hmm. You should have the beginnings of a press kit on your website. You should take your social media seriously. If you ever want to do any kind of TV, you definitely need video of you showing that you can do well on video. And these things are really, really going to help. But if you act like you're used to working with the media, then the media are going to look for those indicators as cues that you're a safe bet to work with. And it's generally going to work out pretty well in your favor. Also, I would just, in terms of like, what you want to say, you wouldn't pitch them and say, that for every announcement that's related to your product or service, you wouldn't do that. But if there were some kind of event like maybe there was a holiday, maybe their dance was in the news, maybe there was a national Dancing with the Stars, or just something where dance is in popular culture. Mm-hmm. La La Land, when that came out, and so maybe you could go on TV and you could say, well, we've been teaching some of our students some of the dance moves from La La Land, and we'd love to perform those because this just got the Golden Globe, or not Golden Globe, just got the Oscar for whatever. And so you could do that. So you have to have a really, really good hook. You have to do a story that people are already talking about. It's very difficult. I'll just end with this. It's very difficult to go to your local media and say, I'd like to do a story about this. And then the media responds with, well, we weren't planning on talking about that, but maybe. Like, you don't want that. You don't want that conversation to go that way. You want that conversation to go like, hey, I would love to do a story about this. And they go, oh, that's fabulous. We were going to talk about that. We'd love to have you on. So that's kind of the approach that you want to go for.
Right. So what you're saying there is that you want something that you want to kind of pitch them something that is current. So it's a little tricky then to prepare in advance, right? Because, creating story ideas and headlines and different things that you could kind of pitch, you're saying that you're going to have a better opportunity of getting the story picked up if it's something that is already being talked about or is about to be talked, like, if, Valentine's Day is coming up and you've got, classes for singles, for instance, or someone met at the studio and they fell in love and got married, or whatever it might be.
Yeah. Let me give you a couple of ideas. So number one, obviously you can look at the calendar and you can see what's coming up. If there's a holiday coming up, if there's what you didn't realize was, July was, some kind. Well, let's say you've got an event that's, a major event. If it's a major event and it's a community news outlet, then that's going to work out pretty well. If it's a bigger city, obviously they're probably it's going to need to be a really, really big event. So you can always look at the calendar, see if there are any holidays, see if there are any events coming up, try to predict what they're going to be talking about. And, every year, news agencies, they do the same stories over and over and over and over again. So you could look at what they were talking about a year ago, and as long as it's related to something in the calendar, you could do that. Mm-hmm. So the other way, and by the way, I should tell you that when you pitch something that's related to the calendar, you should be pitching like 4 weeks out for local media. If you're talking about TV, if you're talking about like national and big city stuff, that's like 6 to 8 weeks out. So like if you're like Chicago, LA, New York, those guys like to work and in some cases like 3 months. So, and honestly, if you're the first one who comes and say, look, I want to talk about back to school, and when back to school time comes and they're like, wow, well, kids aren't even out of school yet, but they still have to plan for that stuff. So if they can pencil you in and you're there before anybody else, then you get the spot. Now there's one other area, and this is when you're pitching related to what is happening right now, or what is about to trend, or what is starting to trend, because guaranteed the media is going to be talking about it. And so a really easy thing to do would just be to go on Google News and just search dance or dance schools and just see what comes up. So right now, again, as of when we're recording this, they're doing a Dancing with the Stars recap, and the finals are set with Adam and Tanya. And so that would be a really, really, especially for, I forget what studio runs Dancing with the Stars, ABC. Mm-hmm. So especially if you went to the local ABC affiliate, that's almost, that your chances of getting that segment are really, 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 really good. Westworld has delivered a beautiful new dance meme in the making. So again, if it's like a trending thing and like people are talking about it, that's what you go into your local media, and it doesn't even have to be your local media. Your digital media, bloggers, podcasters, YouTubers, all of this stuff. If you can be the eyes and the ears for your industry, and that could be, all of dance, and they cover all of arts and entertainment, then you can become the person that always brings them really great dance stories.
And do you think, what's the best way to get in front of these people that are booking these stories? Should we send an email? Should it be a phone call? Should it be an email with like a video message? How can you kind of get in front of them and make sure that what you have to say is getting seen by the important people?
Right. So the most effective way of pitching somebody is it's someone who you know and who you've already worked with. So that's always going to be number one. So, I could pretty much, I've been on my local Fox affiliate here in Orlando over 500 times. So if I pitch them on something, unless they just, they really can't use it for some reason, they're almost always going to take my pitch, just because I have so much experience there and they all know me, like me, and blah, blah, blah. So that would be number one. Okay. If you don't have that, then what I would recommend is that you do some work ahead of time to connect with your media or whoever your media targets are. Now, I'm a big fan of Twitter for this because a lot of media very actively use Twitter. And honestly, Twitter is just one of those social media platforms that it's just so easy to connect with anybody you want. You don't have to have you can follow someone without them following you. So you can engage with them, you can tweet at them, and they're going to see it. And everybody's going to see that you've tweeted them as well. So the platform just lends itself well to you connecting with celebrities or influencers or media. And when you do that, you should be doing this in a way that makes them look good. And this is really key for connecting with any influencer, by the way. Is the best way to connect with an influencer is you just serve your way to the top. And so if they are higher than you in the food chain in terms of like influence, then, you have to come bearing gifts and you have to start by, engaging with them on Twitter. Even if you don't like Twitter, that's okay. I get it. All right. You don't have to love it, but you should be using it as you should be using it as a communications tool. And I believe you should also be using it as a tool to show, how high authority you are. I agree that your target audience as dance studio owners is probably not going to be on Twitter. But like I said, it's a really, really great tool to use. We help our clients a lot with Twitter, helping boost their engagement, their audience numbers, and then ultimately help them make those connections.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's great. And for everyone that's listening, you don't need to have a Twitter for your dance studio, but just, have one for you personally.
That's it.
So that you can you can use it for making these connections and retweeting and, commenting, great article or great segment this morning or starting to build the relationship that way.
That's exactly it.
And then, our studio owners there's probably going to be an opportunity for like a cold approach somewhere. When they don't know someone, they have a great idea, something has come up. In that instance, are they best to shoot through and, find that person through, their email through LinkedIn or would you suggest that?
So what I like to do is, if you feel like you've got a good pitch, you're not, again, you have to be really careful about not selling. Pitching the media is not the place where you should be selling your stuff. Don't talk about special offers. It's not appropriate to do that. They're going to turn you down because they think that the only reason you're doing this is just to sell your stuff, and that's not their job. Their job is to inform, entertain their audience, and get good ratings. Your job, they want to look good. They want to beat the competition. They want to get pay raises and advancements. So do what you can to make them look good and make their job look. Make them look good in their job, and that's really, really going to help you a lot. So I reckon that. So that's really important. No selling. That said, use Twitter to make the introduction, kind of build the relationship, and then email is probably your next best step. And then again, with your pitch, just make sure that I would keep it. Don't make it overly formal, but don't make it overly. Casual either. It should be kind of somewhere in the middle where, and you should start by declaring your fandom, like that you are a fan of that particular show, that particular segment, that particular station. Nobody throws away fan mail. So if you begin with some respect, people generally really appreciate that. And it's, by the way, all of this should be very authentic. If you're trying to fake your way in, they're going to be able to read it. So just, they get a producer, a morning show producer will get 100 or more pitches a day. So they've just gotten really, really good, as all of us have, of sorting through emails very quickly and in trying to determine if this is worth our time or not. So your job is to stand out from everybody else that's pitching them. So again, strike that tone, strike that balance between, familiar and formal. But most of all, show some appreciation, respect, and, that you really like the content that they produce.
I love that. What are some other mistakes that you see people making when they're sending a pitch out? What should we definitely avoid? You've talked about the selling aspect. What else should we be aware of?
Sure. So don't send the same pitch to multiple outlets and just copy and paste. And unfortunately, there are services out there that are a waste of your time, they're a waste of your money, and they promise that you could just fill in the blank and send a pitch, and it'll automatically go to all the media outlets. I guarantee you're not going to get a single pickup from that. I mean, maybe out of 1,000, you might get one, but it's hardly worth your time. So every pitch, again, should be very personal. It's worth it. It's worth your time. I mean, think of the outcome. I mean, if you get a really great TV segment, a 3.5, 4-minute segment in front of your target audience, listen, you're going to get some really good business out of that. And more importantly, and we'll get into this, is the fact that you've now been on TV once just gave you a relationship now with someone who's in TV, and anyone who was considering doing business with you, you now can show them oh, by the way, we're the dance studio that was featured on Fox 35 or ABC 7, whatever it is, right? And so when they see that, they say, oh, well, this isn't just some fly-by-night operation. This is someone who's respected in our community. So yeah, getting back to your original question, the other mistake is just trying to copy and paste and just blast these things out. Just please avoid that temptation. I promise you, this is worth, the couple of hours that it's going to take in terms of what the impact that will have on your business. And listen, this is really important. And I want to talk to, the person who's listening to us. It's a business owner. Your number one job as the business owner is to grow that business. And that does not mean you spend all your time in operations. Get yourself great teachers. Let go of some of that work. I know you love doing it. That's why you started. You're an artist. I get it. Okay. But someone needs to be out there aggressively growing the business so that you can expand, so you can have a bigger impact on more students' lives, more audiences' lives. And that's not going to happen until you get bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's what I want for you.
Yeah, I love that. Great piece of advice right there, Josh. This has been great. I know we're running out of time. So Josh, is there anything else you'd like to share with our studio owners that you think they must know this before we wrap up?
Well, that as you get media wins, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, you'll actually find that when you get that exposure in front of an audience, that's great. You're probably, the phone's going to ring. You're probably going to get some phone calls, probably going to get some people popping in. And it's weird. Like they might come in that week. They might come in 6 months from now. So it's really, sometimes it can be very, very difficult to properly source the value, to identify the value of your PR placements. But one thing I can tell you is that the increase in authority, I don't want to understate how valuable that is. When you get those media placements and you use them really, really well on social media and email, and you let everybody know, and maybe you've got it playing on in the waiting area, so that parents can see all of your media segments and, when you're not in session or whatever. There's a cupcake place here locally where the owner was on Food Network a few times. So when you go in there, guess what's playing on a loop over and over and over and over again? Yeah. I was that rock star that was on Cupcake Wars or whatever it was that she was on. And, so people think, oh my gosh, we have a little hometown celebrity here. And people love doing business with winners. They like doing business with people who have validation, and that's what you're getting when you take this seriously. Of course, we'd love to help you more if that's something that you're really interested in.
Yeah, I love it. Great way to end. Josh, tell us, where can we find out more information about your business, Up My Influence?
Yeah, we've worked with some very successful dance studio owners, in fact. And my recommendation would be to attend a free webinar where I'm really going to drill down, especially, we're going to talk a lot about authority. And I'm going to completely bring your thought process to a place it's probably never been. And it is absolutely going to unlock all of the success and riches that you had hoped for when we really drill down and take a deep look at authority. But you could just go to upmyinfluence.com/webinar. And I will soon be doing another webinar where you can jump on and I'd love to have that conversation with you.
Awesome, guys. Please make sure you check that out. Josh has dropped a lot of value today, so you don't want to miss that webinar. Thanks, Josh. I really appreciate your time and the wisdom and knowledge that you shared with our studio owners today.
Thank you, Clint. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us today. For all the resource links from the show and to receive access to our free dance studio growth training, make sure you visit transformmydancestudio.com.